Marcus Mosiah Garvey, master organizer, was born into Jamaica's colonial system and decided to fight for change. After reading Booker T. Washington's autobiography, he was devoted to teaching the black community the importance of being self-reliant through education. He had high aspirations for building a worldwide organization to empower people of African descent. His goals would inspire later leaders like Kwame Nkrumah, Steve Biko, and Malcolm X. Garveyism symbolized the transformation of the way black people worldwide looked at themselves and their place in the world. Before we begin to tell you more about the man who went on to inspire many further leaders, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and comment below. Born on the 17th of August, 1887, in St. Ann's Bay, Jamaica, to Marcus Garvey Sr. and Sarah Jane Richards, Marcus was the youngest child of his parents and was one of only two of the couple's children to survive into adulthood. Garvey's paternal great-grandfather was born into enslavement before abolition across the British Empire. Marcus's surname, which is of Irish origin, was given to his family from their former enslavers. He had a keen interest in books inherited from his father, a Mason, and made full use of the extensive family library. Garvey attended school until the age of 14, and in 1906 he left St. Ann's and moved to Kingston, where he worked at a printing company. 2 years into the job, Garvey would lead a strike for higher wages, the beginning of Garvey's lifelong fight for justice. Between 1910 and 1914, Garvey traveled through South and Central America, then on to London, England, where he studied at Birkbeck College and took classes in law and philosophy. During his time in London, Marcus Garvey frequently visited Deuce Muhammad Ali's Fleet Street office and was mentored by this renowned Sudanese Egyptian activist. Ali had established the African Times and Orient Review in 1912, a publication which covered issues in the Caribbean, West Africa, South Africa, the United States, as well as Ali's native Egypt. Garvey briefly worked for Ali and contributed an article to the October 1913 edition. Advocating Pan-African nationalism, African Times and New Orient Review became a forum for African and other intellectuals and activists from around the world, and his time under Deuce Muhammad Ali's mentorship made a deep impression on Marcus Garvey's own development as a thinker and activist. At that time, to access the reading rooms at the British Library, which has a copy of every book ever published in England, an established member had to sponsor the new member. Deuce Muhammad Ali sponsored Marcus Garvey's application, and it led to one of the most meaningful experiences during his stay in London, discovering the autobiography of Booker T. Washington, Up from Slavery. Washington believed African Americans needed to develop themselves and demonstrate to white people that they ought to have equal rights in America. Although involved in political movements behind the scenes, Washington frequently publicly claimed that African Americans would not profit from political activism and started an industrial training school in Alabama, the Tuskegee Institute, that embodied his self-help philosophy. This resonated with Marcus Garvey, who found that black people were always on the lower end of society wherever he went. These travel experiences furthered his interest in black history and culture, and imbued with Washington's ideas, Garvey returned to Jamaica in July 1914, and he immediately founded the Universal Negro Improvement and Conservation Association, an African Communities League, known as the UNIA, with the motto, One God, One Aim, One Destiny, which sought, among other things, to build in Africa a black-governed nation. A month later, Garvey attended a meeting of the Queen Street Baptist Literary and Debating Society, where he met a young Amy Ashwood, who shared his political vision. With a gifted co-conspirator, together they built an organization that would change the world. Garveyism expanded into the United States in 1916 and soon established branches of the UNIA in Harlem in New York City, where the UNIA would thrive. By 1919, the rising Black Moses, as the people named Marcus Garvey, claimed a following of about 2 million black men and women. Although the exact number of the association's members was rarely clear, there were at least 700 chapters of the UNIA across the US and Canada by 1921, and over 1,000 chapters of the UNIA throughout the world, mainly in the Caribbean, Central and South, and of course Africa. UNIA members held huge demonstrations and parades, most famously in Harlem, to encourage African Americans' sense of identity and dignity. An impressive, electrifying public speaker, Garvey gave speeches across America, urging Americans of African descent to be proud members of their race, and he encouraged them to return to Africa, their ancestral homeland, and use their talents and energies to create a great nation there, an idea which became known as the Back to Africa movement, and attracted thousands of supporters in the diaspora, as well as inspiring African nationalists who took up Garveyism, cry of Africa for the Africans. Garveyites were strong believers in creating their own spaces, with black-owned businesses and establishments, an important tool for freedom. From the platform of the Liberty Halls worldwide, they spoke of a new Negro, proud of being black. The Negro World, the UNIA newspaper, black people read about the exploits of heroes and heroines of the race and the wonders of African culture. Garveyism taught that black people would only be recognized when they were economically and spiritually strong, preached an independent black economy within the structure of white capitalism, and inducted a black spiritual leader, a flag, and a black national anthem. The UNIA established the Negro Factories Corporation, the Black Star Shipping Line, 1919, and a chain of businesses including grocery shops, restaurants, a printing press, laundries, and a hotel. In 1920, Marcus Garvey presided over an international UNIA convention with delegates representing 25 countries, which produced the Declaration of the Rights of Negro People. The convention ended with a parade of 50,000 black people proceeding through Harlem's streets, led by Garvey in a striking display. Through the UNIA, the Garvey family created a great spiritual and cultural and political movement, inspired by the idea of communal pride, economic empowerment, self-respect, and an affirmation of African heritage. Although the organization lost influence and members in the 1920s and was a shadow of its former self by Marcus Garvey's death in 1940, Garveyites and Garveyism remained an important force for social change. No organization dedicated to uplifting black people has enjoyed a global membership on the scale of the Universal Negro Improvement Association. The teachings of Garveyism inspired canonical black thinkers all over the world, from the Negritude intellectuals in France to the ANC Youth League and Pan-African Congress in South Africa, to anti-imperialist activists across the Caribbean, to the US Black Panthers. Malcolm X is perhaps the most famous child of the Garvey movement. His parents were early UNIA members, and Marcus Garvey visited the family home in the early 1920s. Some UNIA chapters still exist now, 100 years after the Garveys first built the organization. And if you're lucky enough to visit Jamaica, you can learn more about Marcus, Amy Ashwood, and Amy Jack Garvey by visiting 76 King Street in Kingston, where Liberty Hall, the former UNIA headquarters, has been transformed into a museum, research center, and reference library, community center, and heritage site. And in National Heroes Park, you can visit the monument to Marcus Garvey, Jamaica's first national hero.